New series on BBC1. Patrick Malahide plays Inspector Allen in 5 classic detective stories.
This is very irregular, Chief Inspector.
So is murder, Sir John.
Created by the writer of Making Out, meet the riff-raff element.
I know it's a bit of a tall order, but I'm looking for a cook. And I'd like to see the cream of what you have on your books.
Sorry, Dad. Can I introduce you? This is Petula. She's our new cook.
And take a break at the seaside town of West Beach.
What have you done to her? Well, what should I have done? Stuck a tarpaulin over her? I mean, at least she looks like she's enjoying herself.
Mystery, comedy and drama on BBC1.
Now on BBC1, the 9 o'clock news with Martyn Lewis.
President Yeltsin breaks with his parliament and goes ahead with a referendum to decide who will rule Russia. He walked out of the Congress after deputies overwhelmingly rejected his compromise plan for power sharing. Financial ruin for more Lloyd's names. The insurance market is about to declare another record loss. 200 die, more than 1,000 are injured in a series of bomb attacks in the Indian city of Bombay. Good evening. President Yeltsin walked out of the Russian parliament again today after it rejected what he called the final option, a plan for them to share power. The parliament also decided Yeltsin would be impeached if he went ahead with a referendum to decide which of them should rule Russia. But the president is now staking all on just such a referendum and threatened to take additional measures to make sure it goes ahead. Both sides are talking of the dangers of civil war, which has alarmed Western governments. But tonight, President Yeltsin reassured the United States that he remains committed to democracy, human rights and civic order.
Through a swirling Moscow snowstorm, deputies arrived at the Kremlin's Grand Palace today for what may turn out to be their final showdown with Boris Yeltsin. The president, who said he had wanted a compromise, now issued an ominous warning instead.
If these proposals are not passed, I shall have to seriously consider taking additional measures to preserve the balance of power in this country.
Some deputies thought that meant Mr. Yeltsin was about to declare emergency rule. One hardliner got up and said that trucks full of armed troops were already approaching the Kremlin. It proved to be a false alarm, but the president's adversaries are nervous about what he'll do next.
I told you from the beginning, only one question right now, a crucial question, is left open. Would he dare to use military force or not?
Throughout this Congress and in the days leading up to it, Mr. Yeltsin's opponents have pushed his patience to the very limit, testing him, almost willing him to do his worst against them, in the full knowledge that the president can be unpredictable and volatile. And when a crucial vote went against Mr. Yeltsin, he stormed out of the Congress Hall for the second day running. This time his government walked out as well, with his deputy prime minister warning that Russia is on the verge of a revolution. Then, amid chaotic scenes outside the Congress chamber, Mr. Yeltsin's spokesman announced that the president had abandoned attempts at a power-sharing compromise. Instead, he's called his own referendum, in which Russians will be asked next month who they trust to lead them, Mr. Yeltsin or the Congress. Many won't bother to vote, but it's clear most people do prefer the president.
На стороне Ельцина.
Конечно, Ельцин.
Ельцин.
Already promising their support for the president are miners from Russia's biggest coalfield in Siberia. They've promised to go on strike if the Congress continues to oppose him. The Yeltsin camp believe they will win a referendum on who rules Russia.
I think people will support the president in this very difficult and rather dramatic situation.
But recently, Mr. Yeltsin's had to cultivate the powerful leaders of Russia's regions and republics because some of them are hostile to Moscow and they may well refuse to hold a referendum at all. This evening, though, pro-Yeltsin demonstrators marched on the Kremlin. They're delighted that their hero has finally decided to ignore the Congress and do what he does best, appeal directly to the hearts and minds of his people. Ben Brown, BBC News, Moscow.
Lloyd's of London, Britain's largest insurance market, is heading towards its biggest ever losses. The BBC has learnt that the losses, which apply to Lloyd's business in 1990, will exceed even the £2 billion shortfall for 1989.
In the spring sunlight this afternoon, Lloyd's steel and glass fortress is under silent siege, fighting for its very existence in the face of overwhelming losses. Last summer, the outgoing chairman of Lloyd's broke news of the record deficit for 1989, the last year for which accounts are complete. He told investors, "I just hope this won't ever happen again," but now it has. In his last market report, David Coleridge conceded this would be another tough year, but said the corner had been turned. He wrote, "I regret many syndicates won't see a return to profit, but they should show some improvement over the previous year." However, sources at the very heart of the insurance market are now convinced the losses published this summer will actually exceed last year's £2 billion shortfall, which means the threat of financial ruin, which thousands of investors had prayed was receding, is now back with a vengeance. There are 20,000 investors or names who've staked everything they own against a share in the profits during the good years at Lloyd's. After 20 years of healthy returns, profits peaked in 1986 with a surplus of more than £500 million. But then the collapse began, which culminated in the record £2 billion loss for 1989, reported last summer. Now, authoritative sources forecast 1990's shortfall, reported this June, will be £2.4 billion or more. Clive Francis, an investor who's already lost his home and £3 million to Lloyd's, describes the latest news as devastating.
All around, people, in fact, are losing their homes, are losing their farms, losing lands which have been in their families for generations.
And this year's demands for cash are already arriving.
I thought that 1989, the year that closed last year, was, in fact, the trough, and that this year would be better. But, in fact, my results this year are 60% worse at this stage than last year. I mean, that's come as quite a shock to me. I thought that we were turning the corner.
Violent storms which tore across Europe in 1990 and claims to clean up industrial pollution in the United States have swollen this year's losses. But angry investors don't accept the deficit is just bad luck. They're suing Lloyd's, alleging market professionals dumped losses on unwary investors and took unreasonable risks with their money. Among the rebels are dozens of Conservative MPs.
We're getting many, many letters and a lot of pressure now from people in our constituencies, really concerned people who are having to sell their homes in order to pay the Lloyd's losses. It's a disgraceful situation. How do I think the business has been run? In a few words, I think it's been run damn badly. How do I think the business has been run? In a few words, I think it's been run damn badly.
Empty desks at Lloyd's attest to a hemorrhage of business. A third of all names have resigned in the past 5 years. More would go if they could only clear their debts. Unless that exodus can be reversed, the market will collapse. Managers at the very highest level of Lloyd's now clearly recognise the scale of the crisis. The chairman has given his staff until April to come up with a rescue package that will save Lloyd's from self-destructing.
Our apologies for the obvious but slight editing problem with that story. At least 200 people have been killed and more than 1,000 injured in a series of bomb explosions in the Indian city of Bombay. Targets included the city's stock exchange and the railway station. It's not yet known who carried out the bombings. The government has declared a nationwide state of alert.
The skyscraper which houses Bombay's stock exchange was the scene of the first explosion. A devastating blast in the car park under the building caused walls and a ceiling to cave in. In all, at least 50 people were killed. The city's hospitals were inundated with victims and relatives desperately searching for survivors. Indian intelligence agents have been rushed to Bombay and the army has been put on alert. It's not clear who was responsible. Because of the size and sophistication of the blasts, most were caused by car bombs, sources in Bombay say they're unlikely to be the work of militant groups based in India. Tonight, the Indian Home Minister made a veiled accusation against Pakistan, and there's speculation that the bombs may be connected to the Hindu-Muslim violence in January.
Ever since January, Bombay has been in a state of very considerable tension, everybody suspecting their neighbours. And it may be that the bombers today really wanted to feed off that atmosphere of tension in which almost any rumour is likely to be believed.
Communal rioting in India during the past few months has claimed 2,000 lives, 600 in Bombay. According to the latest reports, there has been sporadic violence in the city, and tonight the Indian Prime Minister appealed for calm to avoid a repeat of January's violence.
The former deputy leader of Liverpool Council, Derek Hatton, has been cleared of fraud charges. The trial at Mould Crown Court lasted 8 weeks and was the culmination of a 3-year police investigation. 3 other defendants were also found not guilty. Mr. Hatton had been charged with trying to defraud the council over the sale of land in the mid-1980s.
The North Wales jury had spent 7.5 hours before reaching their majority verdicts. Derek Hatton, accompanied by his wife, lawyer and members of his family, was brief and to the point.
Absolute and total relief. It's been 3.5 years where the family have been put through things that they never, ever deserved to be put through, where the businesses have seemed to be bust, where the whole thing, I mean, questions have got to be asked, and very, very important questions, and very serious questions about why all this went on.
In court, the jury had returned not guilty verdicts on 6 charges concerning the sale of 2 car park sites between 1986 and 1988. The huge relief among the 4 defendants was clearly visible. Derek Hatton gulped, then winked and smiled at the press gallery. His ordeal was over. Codenamed Operation Cheetah, the police investigation into Liverpool City Council land deals began 3 years ago. At the heart of the inquiry was Derek Hatton, the former deputy leader of the council. In a highly publicised and wide-ranging inquiry, police interviewed numerous businessmen, city councillors and council officials. Dozens of allegations were examined. In the end, Mr. Hatton and 4 others, including 2 other former councillors, went on trial, facing between them 3 charges. 4 had been thrown out at pre-trial review. 2 city car parks were the subject of the remaining charges. The prosecution claimed that the Manisters Lane site had been sold below market value after Mr. Hatton had induced the Estates Committee chairman to swing a crucial vote. A second car park at Brownlow Hill was sold in the same way, said the prosecution. But all the allegations were rejected, and tonight Derek Hatton attacked the whole basis of the Merseyside police inquiry.
You're talking about the Assistant Chief Constable of Liverpool, standing up, 3.5 years ago, saying that this was going to be the greatest fraud investigation and trial since Poulsen. It then came down to 2 scrappy, grotty bits of land, which nobody since Adolf Hitler had showed any interest in.
Merseyside police said at a news conference that the court had disposed of only one aspect of Operation Cheetah.
Because a number of associated issues are still under consideration, it would be quite wrong to make any further comment which might be prejudicial to these matters.
But for Derek Hatton, his wife and son Ben, the next move was a family celebration, and then a consultation with his lawyers over whether to take legal action against Merseyside police.
Controversy surrounded Derek Hatton's term in office at Liverpool City Council in the 1980s. Although his radical plans to solve the city's housing crisis won him a measure of popular support, they also brought him into conflict with Labour's national leadership and led to his expulsion from the party.
The one thing Derek Hatton could never be accused of was lacking belief in himself. Barred from political office, the one-time hero of the hard left embraced capitalism. Running his own public relations company, he advised corporate clients on how to do business with local authorities.
This demonstration here today.
In the 80s, he'd come to personify the rise of municipal socialism, and in particular the growing influence of the militant tendency. As deputy leader of Liverpool City Council, he was able to push through a radical agenda, brushing aside all opposition. His policies led to a head-on clash with a Conservative government determined to limit council spending. With Liverpool facing bankruptcy, council workers were told they'd lose their jobs if the city wasn't bailed out. By this stage, the Labour Party had had enough.
To end in the grotesque chaos of a Labour council hiring taxis to scuttle around the city, handing out redundancy notices to its own workers.
He was eventually expelled from the party, defiant to the end. And as a result of their failure to set a rate, Liverpool's rebellious Labour councillors were barred from office. In power, Derek Hatton committed the council to build 5,000 houses, and the pledge was honoured. But there are still sharp divisions in Liverpool over the legacy he left the city.
It's there for all to see. We built 5,000 houses, opened 6 new sports centres, created 1,000 jobs, took on more apprentices than had been taken on in the previous 10 years.
We are left with the bills. We're paying £250,000 every single day to moneylenders, paying off our current city debt. And much of that is the inheritance which he and his friends bequeathed us.
Derek Hatton. Since leaving politics, Derek Hatton has embarked on a new career as a media personality.
Sideways onto it, Derek.
Oh, sorry. While he was waiting for his trial, he even appeared in pantomime as King Rat. Now that he's been cleared of corruption, he's planning the next stage of his career. Whatever it is, the public is unlikely to have seen the last of Derek Hatton.
The head of Britain's biggest car park firm has been cleared of mounting a campaign of industrial espionage against his main business rival. The chief executive of National Car Parks, Gordon Leighton, was accused of spying on Europarks to obtain information illegally. But Mr. Leighton and Simon Hewitt, a security expert, were found not guilty after the court was told that no commercial use had been made of the information. British troops are reported to have pulled out of the Bosnian village where they've been blocked in for 24 hours after Serb forces began shelling the area. The armoured vehicles escorting a medical team into Konjovic Polje were surrounded by Muslim villagers yesterday after a dispute about who they could evacuate.
Serbian forces stepped up their offensive around the Muslim enclave of Konjovic Polje while the British soldiers were still trapped there. The Muslims of the remote mountain village had insisted they could not leave without taking all the wounded with them. But when the Serb gunners in the overlooking hills opened fire, killing at least 16 civilians, the British troops were ordered to pull out.
For time being, there are a lot of people in that area, and it has been shelling. So that's why we don't like them to move, we either, but there has been some problems in that area.
The British troops, led by Major Alan Abrahams from the 9th 12th Lancers, were forced to abandon one of their armoured vehicles. But tonight they arrived unscathed at a UN base just inside the Serbian border. The area is far from secure, however. Bosnian Muslim artillery launched a rare attack across the border into Serbia, killing at least one woman civilian in the town of Banja Koviljaca shortly before the British contingent arrived. The local Serbian commander said the latest offensive against the Muslim pockets of eastern Bosnia was in response to that attack. The Serbs are certainly taking casualties, but while their leaders prepare to resume peace talks on the division of Bosnia along ethnic lines, Serbian fighters are continuing to seize more territory from the Muslims. Carol Walker, BBC News, on the Bosnian border.
The governor of Hong Kong, Chris Patton, has defied the Chinese government and published his plans to give the colony greater democracy before it passes to China's control in 1997. Mr. Patton had delayed publication in the hope of persuading the Chinese to return to negotiations over Hong Kong's future.
There was brinkmanship up to the last minute as the governor arrived as the bearer of bad news. Mr. Patton's ultimatum to China had just run out, so all he could do was press ahead with his controversial democracy reforms.
It has so far still not proved possible to resolve the differences between the British and Chinese sides that stand in the way of talks getting underway.
His decision was welcomed by elected Liberal councillors who'd feared a kowtow to China, but others criticised the governor's action as not being constructive.
We still hope that they go back to the negotiation table. We urge the Chinese government and the British government, because it is important that they do so. We cannot envisage a situation that they confront each other for the next 4 some years.
It could be at least 12 days before the debate begins here on the Patton legislation, which is designed to give Hong Kong more say in its own affairs before Peking takes over. At Government House tonight, Mr. Patton talked of the frustrations of dealing with China.
I think it's very disappointing both for me and my colleagues in government and for the community. We'd leant over backwards in the last few weeks to try to be as accommodating as possible, but I don't think people should confuse being accommodating with not having a backbone or not having any principles. And at the end of the day, China was pressing us, for example, on the question of membership of the team at the talks in a way which was wholly unacceptable. China was trying to really cut out Hong Kong government officials.
The business community reacted adversely. The Hong Kong stock market plunged over 200 points. Many tycoons here disagree with the governor's tactics. They think he's collided with the Great Wall of China and can never win such a confrontation. There's still an outside chance that China might be coaxed back into negotiations before the pattern reforms become law. But Peking has already warned that come 1997, it will dismantle any political arrangements, Mr. Patton's included, of which it disapproves. Brian Barron, BBC News, Hong Kong.
The Labour leader, John Smith, has told the Scottish Labour Party that John Major's management of the economy is inept, clueless and incompetent. Speaking in Inverness, Mr. Smith said next week's budget would be designed to save the Chancellor's skin rather than rescue the British economy.
John Smith was giving his first speech to a Scottish conference since becoming Labour leader. The party's in buoyant mood after the Commons' victory on Maastricht, and Mr. Smith sought to maintain the pressure on Mr. Major.
We'll go on opposing him and his party in Parliament and around the country. We will oppose them before breakfast, before lunch and before dinner.
Warning the Chancellor against raising VAT, he said next week's budget would be judged by one simple test.
Will it be a budget for jobs? How many and when? That's the test.
Reaffirming his support for a Scottish Parliament, the speech went down well with delegates. But in the constituencies, many feel attempts to court voters in England has undermined the party's socialist appeal north of the border. Backed by two influential unions, NUPE and COSY, the mood for greater autonomy from London is growing.
Labour has to have a Scottish flag as well as a red flag, and certainly it needs a red flag flying in Scotland. It's not necessarily the same in the south of England.
The pressure for change has resulted from the rise of Scottish militant in the housing schemes of Glasgow. Areas like Pollock used to be firm Labour territory, but led by Trotskyite Tommy Sheridan, who masterminded a controversial but effective campaign of poll tax non-payment, militant have won 7 local council seats.
That's really revealed the extent to which Labour has a soft underbody to its vote in Scotland, that some of the most working-class parts of the country are quite prepared to defect to an alternative socialist camp when one comes along. And I think what this reveals is the extent to which Labour's organisational base in Scotland is weak.
A weakness which, despite its 49 MPs, many delegates fear could prompt a potentially fatal downward spiral in Labour's Scottish fortunes. After 14 years out of power, Scottish Labour officials concede that change is needed if they're to keep their political enemies at bay. Negotiations on autonomy could begin as soon as the conference ends. But the details of just how much independence London is prepared to give the Scottish Party will take at least a year to finalise.
6 trade unions involved in broadcasting have sent a letter to the BBC chairman, Marmaduke Hussey, very critical of the corporation's handling of the tax affairs of its Director General, John Birt. The union said it was an astonishing departure from the traditions of public service broadcasting. And the leader of the National Union of Journalists said both Mr. Birt and Mr. Hussey should resign. Our media correspondent Nick Hyam reports.
The disclosure that John Birt's wife received a salary both as a director of his private company and a secretary has added fuel to the row over his financial affairs and prompted calls for his resignation.
If he's interested, as I'm sure he is, in the BBC, the present position and the future, the best thing that he can do in the circumstances is undoubtedly to resign, and resign quickly.
But there was also praise from some MPs for the prompt way John Birt had acknowledged that his tax status was inappropriate and had joined the BBC's staff. Instead, there was criticism of the BBC's chairman, Marmaduke Hussey, and the vice-chairman, who approved the payment of Mr. Birt through his company. A grouping of all the main trade unions at the corporation today sent a strongly worded letter to Mr. Hussey. They express concern at the lack of judgment shown by the governors and Director General, and they say the decision to employ Mr. Birt as a freelance was an astonishing and dangerous departure from the traditions of public service broadcasting. They say the chairman and vice-chairman should have apologised, but one signatory of the letter goes further.
My own union, the National Union of Journalists, has written to Mr Hussey calling on him to resign. We've also written a letter to the Board of Governors urging them either to endorse the resignation of Mr Hussey or to sack him.
The BBC Tonight was making no comment, but some of the corporation's governors are reportedly unhappy at the way this affair has been handled from the start. They're expected to raise the issue at a regular meeting of the governors next week.
The BBC has just announced that it will be axing its controversial soap opera El Dorado when the present run finishes in the summer. The BBC has spent £10 million on producing the soap and building the set in Spain, which had been aimed at attracting large early evening audiences. But viewing figures slumped to below 3 million. The new controller of BBC1 said figures had improved recently and the decision had been a very hard one.
I think it would have required a very long time and a very long commitment, and I think everybody involved believed that it needed another year to kind of bring itself around if it were to do that. And I didn't have enough confidence to believe that it would necessarily come around in that time.
The first round of voting in the French general election takes place in just over a week, with the polls pointing to a crushing defeat for the ruling socialists. The party has been damaged by high unemployment, a string of scandals, and the public's wish for a change.
A housing estate in Lille in northern France, and the socialist candidate is out looking for support.
Bonjour, madame. Je suis Bernard Roman. Je suis adjoint au maire.
At the moment, his party holds the constituency with a sizable majority. It may not hold it for much longer. The socialists have been in power for 10 of the last 12 years. The opinion polls reflect a national feeling that they've been there long enough. Throughout France, soup kitchens like this one provide food for the poor and unemployed. 12 years after François Mitterrand was elected president, demand has risen to the point where the organisers have to operate a means test. The campaign is dominated by the issue of unemployment. The left is going through the motions of defending its record, but that's not easy.
When we started, there were 1.5 million unemployed people. Now there are 3 million. The number has doubled. It's a real failure. Are we to blame for it? Yes, sure.
Recently, the local paper here in Lille accused the socialists of involvement in a financial scandal. There have been many such accusations nationwide. People expected better of the left. The damage to the party has been enormous. This whole region used to be a fortress of the left, but faith in the socialists has crumbled. The socialists know and accept that this general election is already lost, and already they're looking to the election of a new president in 2 years' time and to the rise of a new political grouping out of the ashes of the old Socialist Party. Leading socialists, such as Michel Rocard, are calling for a big bang after the election, a political explosion in which the old parties based on class and background will vanish.
Que la période immédiate se prête mal à ce big bang politique auquel j'aspire.
He wants to create a new grouping of socialists, ecologists, human rights campaigners and moderates. He and his friends believe the Socialist Party created by François Mitterrand has had its day. The voters, it seems, agree.
More on Newsnight, 10:30, BBC 2. From the 9 o'clock news, good night. Have a relaxing weekend.
Good evening from Newsroom Southeast. 5 men have been jailed for a total of more than 40 years for their part in a cocaine smuggling operation. They used an Oxford language school as a front.
It was 1.4 kilos of cocaine found sewn inside the clothing of a young Colombian man, which led customs officers to an even bigger catch. The 3 men behind the smuggling operation, who'd created a bogus international language school based in Oxford as a cover for couriers posing as students. At Isleworth Crown Court today, each of the 3 organisers received 10-year sentences, the 2 Colombian carriers 6 years each. The judge, David Miller, said it had been a cleverly contrived and well-thought-out scheme. In sentencing, he said he was bearing in mind the appalling misery suffered by cocaine addicts. The sentences came a day after cocaine worth £500,000 was seized at Dover. 12 people were arrested.
A doctor who tried to expose evidence of racial discrimination in the medical profession faces possible disciplinary action from the General Medical Council. Sam Everington claims hospitals are discriminating against non-white job applicants.
Dr. Sam Everington and an Asian friend sent out fake job applications for 23 posts. The English-sounding names were shortlisted twice as many times as the Asian. Before the survey was completed, Dr. Everington was arrested by the fraud squad for submitting bogus applications.
This is purely on surname, and it's quite unacceptable for consultants to be discriminating against junior doctors in this way.
Dr. Everington still faces possible disciplinary action by the General Medical Council, although the fraud charges have been dropped. But he says he'll continue his campaign and is sending his findings to the Health Secretary.
That's it. Join us tomorrow afternoon at 5:25 for News and Sport. But now the weather with John Ketley.
Good evening. The mild weather's going to stay with us right the way through the weekend into the beginning of next week. But there will be some rain to watch out for, mainly in the west. That'll help the weeds grow. Now, some pretty high temperatures today, up to 17 degrees at Cromer in Norfolk. Many places between 13 and 15. Just along southern coast with onshore breezes, was it that little bit cooler? But even so, up to 11 or 12 degrees. We had some rain, and that's been developing during the course of this evening through the Irish Sea and moving eastwards into southern Scotland through northern parts of England too. Some of that rain quite heavy up on the hills. It'll continue making progress, steady progress eastwards into the North Sea as the night goes along. Elsewhere, a mainly dry picture, fairly clear. In fact, for southern and eastern parts, also up in north-east Scotland where the rain won't arrive in actual fact. There will be more rain pushing northwards up into Northern Ireland as the night goes along. Now, out in the west, it'll be quite windy. It'll certainly be very mild, about 7 or 8 degrees, quite muggy really. Whereas on the eastern side, though it will be milder than last night, temperatures will dip a little bit lower, perhaps down to 4 degrees up in northeastern parts of Scotland. Well, tomorrow's chart shows these mild winds coming all the way from North Africa, all the way up across the country, but this system here always trying to make inroads into the far western part of Britain. Rather grey start in many places, but there will be some sunshine over northeast Scotland and down through eastern counties of England. Skies brightening in many other western parts as well, but the best of the sunshine always likely to be on the eastern side of the country. And during the afternoon, outbreaks of rain turning up there in Northern Ireland, and probably after dark, some outbreaks of rain into the Western Isles of Scotland, fringing West Wales, and also the far southwest of England. And some pretty respectable temperatures tomorrow. Watch out for that breeze in the west, quite strong at times. But on the eastern side of the country, 13, maybe up to 16 degrees through Lincolnshire. A very weak affair coming across eastern parts during Sunday, but some brightness to begin with in the southeast. Skies brightening for a while, then more rain turning up in the west later in the day. Across in the continent, a good deal of sunshine to come. Pretty high temperatures too, up to 15 to 18 degrees, maybe 20 degrees down there in northwest Africa. If you're going away, or if you're staying here with these high temperatures, watch out, get the sunblock and keep it handy. That's it from me.
Arena on BBC2 in a moment profiles the life and work of the acclaimed Chinese film director Zhang Yimou, whose movies, while being highly praised in the West, are severely censored back home in China.
When an FBI agent tracks down a wanted man,
if you try to escape, I'm authorized to stop you any way I see fit.
the problems really begin.
You look like me.
With a little inspiration,
John Buckner, FBI. It's freedom time.
anything can happen.
I've been abducted by the Vienna Boys Choir.
Don't push it, buddy.
Dennis Hopper and Kiefer Sutherland star in the manic movie Flashback. Next Friday, 9:30 on BBC1.
How come everything is starting to look so weird?
For the same price as a day's BBC, you can buy this picture. Hook. The BBC, the best value television and radio there is.
And now it's back to BBC One's Night of Comic Relief.